And just weeks ago, my next guest was the Leader of the Opposition. Tonight, he'll be in North Vancouver at an event called Making Canada Better, a Conservative Vision. And joining me in studio is Andrew Scheer, the MP for Regina, Qu'Appelle, Saskatchewan, and a former leader of the Conservative Party of Canada. Welcome, Andrew. So nice to have you here.
Great to be here. Thanks very much for the invite.
So let's start with Pierre Poilievre's by-election win in Alberta. That brings him back to the House of Commons after losing his seat in the last election. What does this mean for your party?
Well, it's very exciting for us to have Pierre back in the House. It was a great show of support from voters in Battle River, Crowfoot, and we greatly appreciate that. Look, Pierre set the agenda for the past few years while he was Leader of the Opposition from the House of Commons at a time when everybody in Canada, all the political pundits and the left-wing institutions were saying that, the debate on the carbon tax is over and Conservatives just need to accept that. Pierre said, no, it's wrong. It's bad for Canadians. It's bad policy. He led the fight on that. He shone a light on what was happening with the Trudeau Liberals' radical drug experiment with legalizing the use of hard drugs in public places. So having Pierre back in the House means that we're very confident that we're once again going to be able to drive the agenda for Canadian policy.
But he drove the agenda, but he did not win the election. In fact, he didn't even win his seat in the election. So are there lessons that the party is taking from voters in that last election as you move forward with Pierre as your leader?
Absolutely. I've been involved in federal politics now since 2004. Win or lose, political parties analyze what happened. My son just started his football season. They watch game film after every game, whether they win or lose. Obviously, we didn't form government. We have to learn what happened. Why did we fall short? I like to focus on the positives because the first thing to ensure success is to not lose any of the gains you've made. And when I look and see who Pierre brought into our party, directly that he himself can take credit for it because we've seen people at Conservative Party events who not only have never voted Conservative, but many of whom have never even voted or taken part in the political process. Pierre inspired them with that message of making housing affordable again, making communities safe again, restoring the value of paychecks again. Now, what was the difference between the 42% that we got, a historic number of votes, and forming government? That's what we've been spending some time looking at. Pierre's touring the country right now, meeting with former candidates, with campaign managers, people who knocked on thousands and thousands of doors. We want to hear that input from people who actually want our party to succeed. And I can assure you that heading into the fall with Pierre back at the helm, you'll see some of those ideas that are coming out and some of the feedback that we received. And
in terms of continuing to get people to come on to your side that will vote for you, that didn't vote for you in the last election, you have a very solid base of young men. A lot of women did not connect with the party. A lot of older Canadians did not connect to the party. So will there be policies and concrete plans in place that would address those issues, that would speak to those people?
Well, I don't accept the premise. We have historic numbers of votes from women as well. In fact, I think I can't remember the exact numbers, but in many demographics, in many regions, we had an advantage that the Conservatives have never seen before amongst all Canadians, amongst men and women, young and old. I know people in my own riding who voted Liberal in many elections, and they had to go and get jobs in their 70s because the Liberal inflationary policies have eroded the power of their pensions. So they're working again at 72, 73 years old. They're not happy about that. They voted Conservative to end the inflationary policies of the Liberal government. Clearly, there is a demographic. There's a group of Canadians that decided to go with the Liberals instead of Conservatives. We got to figure out why. Was that a policy thing? Was it a messaging thing? Was it a timing thing? Sometimes these things can be boiled down to very complex things or very simple things, and we're going to do that methodically. We're not going to let political pundits who don't knock on doors tell us why they think the
sure,
issues came from.
I do understand that, but we have to address the fact that heading into the election, the Conservatives had an enormous lead. They very quickly and very dramatically lost that lead. And so what occurred there under Pierre Poilievre's leadership?
I'm not sure you can make that comparison almost like it's a sports game and saying, well, somebody has a certain amount of lead and then the other team scores a bunch of points. in December of 2024, about 42% of Canadians were saying that they were going to vote Conservative. On election day, about 42% of Canadians voted Conservative. What we saw was a complete collapse of the NDP, an unprecedented implosion.
Absolutely.
Where in many situations that vote did go to the Liberals. Now, not in every place. We did get a lot of former NDP voters voting for us in places like Welland and St. Catharines and here in British Columbia, Vancouver Island, huge gains in British Columbia. So that's what, when I talk about the gains that Pierre made, I mean, no one, if you had told me after the 2021 election that our next leader was going to win St. Catharines, win seats on Vancouver Island, win the youth vote, get 42% of the vote, it'd be like, well, fantastic. Tell us who that leader is, and we'll just put him in right now, So I look at the situation we're in right now. Incredible opportunity, incredible gains. Let's absolutely learn those lessons, but let's not forget that what Pierre was able to put together was incredible. When our previous leader stepped down, we were a party that was down in the polls. We had a lot of divisions with our own caucus, our own party, major policy changes on key issues. Pierre came in and said, no, we're going to be principled. We're going to take our rock-solid conservative ideas that we know will improve Canada. We're going to take them to the Canadian people in a way that will resonate with people. And he did. And he held the line and stood on principle on the carbon tax, on drug legalization, on easy bail for dangerous offenders. And those are the prescriptions. And the irony of all this is, when we're talking about the last few years, is that the only way the Liberals could win this election was by pretending to be something they're not after dumping their leader. I mean, Justin Trudeau was a leader of a Liberal Party that did not want to leave. They had to basically, pull him off with a crowbar and then bring in a leader who suddenly is trying to reinvent themselves. I think that is a credit to the conservative movement. What's that?
How did he suddenly try and reinvent himself? He stepped into politics for the first time, so that's reinvention.
Okay, well, first of all, let's take that idea that he stepped into politics for the first time just park it.
Okay.
He was Justin Trudeau's senior economic advisor.
I should not have worded it that way. He did not hold office.
Has been a partisan Liberal for quite some time. Look, he's trying to change the rhetoric. If you look at what he's been a crusader for his whole life, he is a big elitist who wants the government to control the economy. He is a radical zealot on things like carbon taxes. He actually complained that Justin Trudeau's carbon tax was too low. So here's a great example of reinventing yourself. On one day, you're saying Justin Trudeau's carbon tax is too low. The next day, you're saying that you're going to get rid of it. That's a pretty big
perhaps
reinvention.
Not listening to what Canadians are asking for?
Okay, but it also tells you that it's not a core belief from him. He had to reinvent himself. So you can give him credit for being a chameleon and being anything that he thought the voters wanted. But I think then you would have to concede that he's not, that he wouldn't, that would represent a shift in principles, or that he never had those principles in the first place. Okay. So I just make the point that what Pierre was able to do as leader of the opposition was to massively change the issue set in Canada to a more conservative flavor, and force the Liberals to make major policy reversals, including dumping their sitting prime minister.
I do just want to get to the numbers just briefly. An Abacus survey of more than 1,900 random Canadians this month said if there was an election, 41 of decided voters would pick the Conservatives versus 39 for the Liberals. That is great news for your party. But the same poll found that Mark Carney has a net approval rating of 18%, and Pierre Poilievre has a net disapproval of -2. So I think the question is, I'm curious what the party sees in Pierre that perhaps the majority of Canadians are not seeing right now.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, I'm always very hesitant to comment on polls because they can shift, and it's hard to drill down exactly what's driving one thing or another. I look at it as I think anytime there's an election, people try to, they hope the government does well. We're facing some major crises. Some of them are domestically created by a government. Some of them are external and unjustified, like the U.S. administration's Donald Trump's tariff policy.
Exactly.
I think, and look, I'll say this as a partisan conservative. I want these tariffs to go away. I want to go back to the time when we could buy and sell freely across the border. That's good for Canadians. It's good for Americans. So I think there's some goodwill and some hope that will be achieved. I will say that Mark Carney promised us that he would deal with these tariffs quickly, that he had the plan, that he knew how to handle Donald Trump. And on every metric, they're worse today than they were when Justin Trudeau was in power. So I think some of that is reflected in Canadians legitimately hoping that Mark Carney with a mandate after the election is actually able to make some progress on that. But we'll see. It's been a few months now. Crime's getting worse. Housing starts are not where they need to be. Immigration backlogs are higher. Unemployment is higher. Tariffs are higher. I've come from Saskatchewan. Canola tariffs are a huge blow to our economy. Meanwhile, BC Ferries, with a Canadian federal government loan, is using Chinese steel. So, it's going to be up to us to show Canadians that Mark Carney's not as advertised. He's certainly not he's certainly not reaching the standard that he set for himself. Because we didn't say that he was going to do these things at unimaginable speeds. He said it. He said he would deal with the tariffs quickly and effectively. He said that he would get big projects built at speeds we could not imagine. So we are just going to hold him up to the standard that he set for himself. And I'm confident that Canadians are going to see that they would be better off with a Conservative government, especially when we add into that the domestic challenges that Canadians are facing because of Liberal policies.
Liberal policies, but also seeing a lot of improvement in terms of interprovincial trade and work with strengthening our trade with countries other than the U.S. Is there any hope that going forward there'll be a little bit more of a sort of one Canadian vision between the Liberals and the Conservatives moving forward right now to address some of these incredible extenuating circumstances that we face from things such as the Trump administration?
Well, so maybe I'll just answer that part first and then touch on a couple of points that you brought up. Absolutely. I mean, if Mark Carney needs legislation passed to help deal with U.S. tariffs or then we will be open to that. I think it's remarkable that considering where different political parties were on free trade in my lifetime. I grew up in the 80s and 90s. I'm 46 years old. I remember the 88 election campaign.
As do I.
And there was no consensus on free trade in that election. It's great to see NDP and Liberals come to the Conservative view that free trade is good for both countries. So in that respect, anything we can do to help get that back, get that Conservative policy established again, we'll certainly want to be cooperative on that. On things like interprovincial trade, big promises were made. What the federal government has really done is just looking at areas of federal jurisdiction and trying to harmonize that. There are still lots of provincial barriers to goods moving across borders. BC wines on Ontario shelves and vice versa. All kinds of things like food inspection and processing plants in Saskatchewan not being able to sell into Manitoba. Mark Carney hasn't made any kind of progress on that. And keep in mind that this is an existential threat that we're facing from the U.S. Canada's exports dropped by 13%. So going around to other countries, we always believe in diversifying trade. The previous Conservative governments signed dozens of free trade deals in South America, Asia, Europe. But at the end of the day, there's two things that we need. We need the relationship with the U.S. back to normal, and we need our big energy projects going. The best way to massively increase our exports is by reviving the pipelines that the Liberals killed. And Mark Carney was out there cheerleading for these kinds of policies that trap our natural resources in the ground. He still won't make a commitment to getting a pipeline built. We still are selling our energy products at a discount. The Polish ambassador was on, I believe it was a CBC program, basically had to stifle his laughter when he was talking about some of the LNG that that his government is importing from the U.S. is actually Canadian, but the Canadian companies have to sell it at a discount to the U.S. The U.S. marks it up, sells it to Europe, and makes the big profit. So none of that is going to change if Mark Carney keeps going down the Liberal policy of anti-energy policies. And the EV mandates is another example of this, because he's still doubling down on forcing Canadians to buy electric vehicles. That's going to hurt the auto sector. It's going to hurt consumers. It's going to enforce a choice on them that buyers just don't want. And at the same time, it's going to kill jobs in the Canadian auto sector. And so far, there's no sign that he's backing down from that. So to me, I'm very pessimistic on his domestic agenda, hopeful on the international agenda that it bears fruit and we get back to normal with the U.S., but it's not looking great right now.
I wish we had more time to talk, but unfortunately we don't. I really appreciate you coming in, though, and I hope that the event tonight in North Vancouver is a success. Where is it being held, just so people know?
Oh, that is a great. Oh, geez, I just got off the plane. It's if you give me 2 seconds, I can look it up on my itinerary here, or I can maybe just message it.
You know what?
So you
just message it, and we will let people know where they can find it. Thank you so much. It was really nice to meet you.
Thank you very much.
Take care.